championship can only be won by one, and it's going Dutch in 2021. Max Verstappen, for the first time ever, is champion of the world.
What's up, guys? X Ricci here, bringing you episode 13 of the F1 podcast. I am your host, X Ricci, with my amazing co-host, Andrew.
Hello.
And Erica.
What's up, y'all?
And I just want to first start off and just wish everybody a happy new year and hope you guys had a nice holiday break. Today's episode, I think, is pretty clear. It's been a couple of weeks since the end of the F1 2021 season. So what better way to bring the pod back after the Christmas break and talk about let's just talk about the season. I don't know about you guys, but it was a pretty quiet season, no? Nothing exciting?
Quietest it's been in a while. Oh, you mean yeah. It's been the quietest season ever.
Yeah, nothing
Really happened.
Oh, I mean, talk about a snooze fest. Just
It's not like the championship came down to the last race or anything.
And it's not like one of the greatest drivers ever is debating not participating in the sport anymore after what happened. No, not at all. Not at all, right? No.
And Michael Massey can still work next year?
Man, imagine being that bad at your job and still having a job.
I think that's like the weathermen, though, is they can be wrong all the time. Weatherman or weatherwoman, they can be wrong anytime, and they still have their job. But that's not this podcast is about. This podcast is going to be about that. Just me ranting. I love the weather. I promise. That this pod is going to be, or this episode is basically summarizing the very fun 2021 season. Guys, just taking the fact that we had 3 new drivers on the grid, 4 former F1 champions, 10 Grand Prix winners on this grid to start the season. And obviously last season we had 17 races. This was up to 22 races. And we were able to go back to some of the places that we weren't able to go because of the previous pandemic. So I think what stood out to me is I think the first question I have from fans was, what was the biggest moment you thought for the 2021 season? Was there, and I think I will phrase this as, what was your favorite race? Because I think there was, with the 22 races and now the introductory of sprint races, I'm curious to know what you guys think. I guess, let's just go. Erica, I'll start with you on this one. What was your favorite race?
Well, so my favorite race, I have to go with Monza. I truly think that was an exciting race this year. I mean, between it being the Temple of Speed, which is always like such a great race to watch, we had so much going on. I mean, between, all of the penalties people were taking on their engines so that they could be in fighting form for the race. We had a whole bunch of exciting action on the track that resulted in the 2 top drivers crashing into each other in a very nearly catastrophic and fatal way. And we got McLaren with a 1-2 on the podium, which I think just kind of speaks for itself. Like, Danny Rick back up there, Wayman Trophy around, Zach Brown with a shoey. I mean, what's not to love about everything that went down there? So as much as I think there was a lot to kind of analyze in that race, it was just so entertaining to watch as someone who's a big fan of the sport and excited to be coming back to it after a season or 2 away.
I had a feeling you were going to pick Monza.
I'm a fan of the papaya. It's not surprising at all.
Also want to point out the fact, too, that that pod before Monza, I said Danny Rick was going to have a weekend, and you both looked at me like I was an idiot.
Okay, truthfully, though, like at that point in the season, I think very few people would have made that call. So I will, but
can't discount the honey badger, though.
You really can't. You honestly cannot.
Those Aussies always know how to pull it out in a race. We can say that. Andrew, what do you think what your race of the season was?
I'm going to say Azerbaijan because it was like the one that had one of the most like craziest twists and turns. Like it started off with it was a pretty normal, straightforward race up until the point where Stroll lost his tire. His rear left tire to a puncture, and then that triggered a safety car / red flag, and then same thing happened to Max later. So they had the whole Pirelli tire issue / controversy happen, and then at that point you had one of the biggest. You had one of the biggest title change. I thought that point was going to be one of the biggest title changing events, even though it was so early on the season. It was like a chance for Lewis to really jump the gun and get 25 points on Max. And then at the restart, he completely bottles it into the first turn with the brake magic. And then
brakes were heating up. It's because you just knew something was going to go wrong.
I was like, there's no way he holds that turn into first. He holds that line into turn one. And then he just completely just ran through it and choked it. It was just funny when he said, like, this is not it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. Well, clearly he didn't capitalize on the Azerbaijan incident. And it was like the podium of dreams, really. We had Checo winning. We had Seb getting on the podium for Aston Martin, their first one of the year. And then we had Gasly having a tremendous performance with AlphaTauri. So I thought Azerbaijan was one of the best races of the year.
I know we don't do video on the pod just yet, but for those that were listening, I just got giggly because that was probably one of the best restarts. I just especially seen Hamilton literally just lock up, and just that's it. Because like he had the best opportunity there, especially with Verstappen's tires blowing up in the middle of the lap. Yeah, I was pretty giddy watching that segment. I guess for me, I'm going to take it somewhere differently. I think for me, it was the Hungary Grand Prix. And the reason why I picked that is not only that Alpine won and Ocon wins his first ever F1 race. I think there's just a lot of going on in that race. And especially when they had the restart and everybody was able to go into the pits except for Hamilton. So Hamilton was still on the inters. So you have the glorious photo of Hamilton only the one being in the track and everyone's in the pit lane. In the minute you saw it, you're like, okay, here comes the memes. It's here it comes. But you saw probably the best defending, I would say, in F1 history, with Fernando Alonso defending his life and ensuring that Ocon was able to go win the race and big points. And especially at the end of the race, like you saw Ocon celebrating and like kept pointing over to Alonso's car and says, "You're the reason why I'm here. You're the reason why I'm here." It's actually kind of one of the, I honestly think maybe they're one of the better car pairings on the team, and maybe we'll dive into that later. But I thought that was like my favorite race, and obviously the controversy, because F1 loves some controversy. Vettel gets on the podium, and then a couple hours later he gets DQ'd, and Carlos Sainz, as we'll probably talk about in this pod later, just comes up with another podium, just bounces up, all quiet all season.
I mean, also another memeable moment came out of that when he's in the middle of being interviewed and gets called to the stewards, and just the look of despair on the man's face. Just, I
would say my favorite part of that race, though, is when they all went back out after the delay. After the red flag incident from the first lap, when they all went back out to do the formation lap, and everyone came in but Lewis. And he was the only one on the grid starting.
Like, again, just so many questions. Like, so for that one, it's not that he couldn't come in. It's not like the pit lane was closed or something when he was going past. That was a decision by the team, right?
Yeah, they missed it.
So I think in the rule book, the team's not allowed to technically say to come in. It's the driver's call at that point. It's some weird rule in terms of the communication. But when everybody boxes but you, I think there's a bit of an issue.
Oh my God.
And the crazy part is, like, everyone drove the track one lap, like on the formation lap. So what's something that he didn't see among everybody else? Like, it would have been incredible if like nobody started from like a standing start. They all started from the pit lane. That would have been awesome.
Imagine, yeah, he starts in the pit lane and he doesn't change his tires, and then when it goes out, he's like, "Oh my God, what did I do?"
Yeah.
I have made a huge mistake.
You think he would maybe turn around and just notice if that was the case, like, "Oh, everyone's putting on intermediates. Maybe I need to put on some inters."
I
Honestly.
Nope.
wonder who else felt that way during the season.
Oh, Lando!
Yeah, but he
Oh,
would have
little baby Lando. Something about
he
those
would have
green
told you to
tires,
he
man.
would have told you to shut up. Couldn't handle the
You
pressure.
know what? You live and you learn. So
Oh, that's also one of my favorite memeable moments from Russia was when Stroll got asked if he was all right on the slicks. He's like, yeah, no problem. And as soon as he said yes, he's just completely spun it into the turn because it was too wet. And she's like, are you sure you get on the tire? He's like, oh yeah, I'm fine. Literally the next second, gone.
or Vettel putting on the slicks, doing like approximately a lap, and then having to put inters back on again.
Yeah, that was a tough one in Turkey.
Sometimes when you're at the bottom of the pack, you just gotta send it.
True.
You take those, take a little
Be
grain of
silly,
salt.
just send it.
So second question from, so this might get into a little bit more of a debate. So second question from the fans. Who was your overrated and underrated driver for the season? And so this is like, obviously, this is spanned throughout the whole season, so you can kind of think about who you want. Andrew, I'll send it to you on this one. Who do you think was your overrated, underrated?
So my underrated one for sure was Carlos Sainz. The guy who got the least amount of podium, or at least amount of respect in the media this year for sure. But the fact that he finished every race and he was in points every race but two is unbelievable. And the fact that he didn't get much credit this year is ridiculous because he had 3 podium finishes, a bunch of top fives, and only 2 races, and that was Portimao and I think France, where he didn't get points, but he finished like from the Styrian Grand Prix onwards with points, and that to me is an incredible feat that I don't think. And he finished ahead of his teammate, who's like the prodigal Ferrari son at this point, right? So who knows what happens in the next couple of years, because he literally beat the number 1 driver on the team.
I might be breaking rules here because I know we're technically supposed to only talk about the F1 season recap, but there was a little birdie of an F1 article saying that they're going into contract negotiations. So that could only see what's going to happen. And then just to make a note, 0 DNFs of the year.
Yeah, none.
Carlos Sainz.
And I think both times he finished out of the points, he was like 11th. So like he could have in theory finished in points every race this year, which is shocking.
And also got 4 podiums. Like, that's nothing to turn your nose up at.
All right, he got the Monaco. Oh, he was second in Monaco too. I look for him to win a couple of races this year. I really think he breaks his duck going into next year. He wins a couple of races.
Currently, I'll go ahead. Sorry.
I was saying, but for me, for my overall overrated driver, there's 2. One being Lance Stroll, and more so it's the Aston Martin team that came into it. He just did not have a good season. He's not good with the car. I think his highest finish was 6 at Qatar, which was bad considering what they had last year. So you almost wonder if last year if the car was truly out of regulation, or if this year they got slapped with the regulation changes the most. But nevertheless, that team's in a little bit of turmoil right now with Safnauer moving or leaving on, and they don't even have a team principal. They lost one of their big title sponsors in BWT, so should be interesting. And then my other one is I'm gonna hate to say this, but Yuki Tsunoda. Guy was picked to do a lot of great things this season, from what I heard. He was a really hyped rookie, and he kind of came in, and I get it was his first year, but you can kind of see how to me he could have been he was a little overrated. I know he had the best performance out of all the rookies, but he was given the dominantly better car. I think Mick would have done a much better job in the AlphaTauri car than Yuki did all season.
So I'll go. So my pick was going to be Carlos Sainz, but just so we can trade something different. Oh, hello, Erica's cat. Welcome to the pod. Honorary guest, as everybody knows. Erica's cat makes an appearance at every podcast. So
Yes,
we're very glad. Oh, it's telling. The cat is telling. Oh, the cat wants to remind everybody to like and subscribe, and also check out us on Apple Podcast. We are very proud that now, if you can go on walks, you can listen to us on Apple Podcasts. So make sure to hit that subscribe button.
Speaking about Apple Podcasts, we really would appreciate if you guys hit that like and subscribe button. This is just a quick little commercial break, but we'll get back to it as soon as possible. Make sure to follow us on YouTube, make sure to follow us on Twitch at xreachy, and make sure to hit that follow button. But let's get back to it.
Anyways, so my pick, I think most top rated driver, I would say, was the return of two-time winning F1 Fernando Alonso. And I think definitely he showed consistency in a car, which I think not a lot of people probably expected him to do. And I thought, being 10th in the grid is probably a fair position for just how the season went. But I also think, the amazing defending at Hungary, getting him a much deserved podium at Qatar for the team really really stands out on how he can drive. He can still drive for his age. I think he's 40. Yes, somewhere he's old. Sorry, this is embarrassing. I'll figure it out later. Born 1981. Do the math. But I think my most disappointing driver is, I'm gonna have to pick. It has to go to the Aston Martin team. I think especially with the Racing Point from the year before doing so well, you would think that someone like Lance Stroll and Sebastian Vettel will be able to kind of pick the team up. And this is a tough year. And back to your point, Andrew, I don't even know what next year is going to look like for them, especially when them losing their top team principal. And I think that's the reason why Sebastian Vettel went there in the first place. I think that was one of the reasons. But
Otmar was the one who recruited him too. So it's kind of like, does Vettel just become the team principal and driver now? Call his own race.
He picks up trash. I forget that. Do you remember? Oh yeah, do you remember early in the season of him just every other race? There's a new class of Sebastian Vettel. There's the guy that picks up trash, the dad,
fire extinguisher.
Fire extinguisher. Yeah. So maybe that's the next class. Sorry, Erica.
No, there was also a safety car Vettel at Spa.
Oh yeah. Oh. See, so many good memories of Vettel this year.
Just not on the track, driving, but everything else. What about you, Erica? Overrated, underrated drivers?
So I think overrated drivers, if we're going there, I totally agree. I think Charles Leclerc was a pretty obvious bet. I know that. I mean,
I love it. Let's go.
I love Leclerc. I'm just going to be completely honest about that. But I think a lot of people were hoping that Ferrari would be able to do a little bit more after some of the mishaps. And like we've said, he's a guy that they've put a lot of faith in and are expecting a lot from with that ink deal from a few years back. But I just don't know that we're seeing the payoff from it. I mean, super crummy what happened in Monaco that prevented him from actually racing that day, which I think was his big shot at potentially getting a title, which would be amazing. Not title, but like a win at home, which would be amazing. But he did pretty well. But if we're looking, I mean, the car had to be retired once. He didn't even start Monaco, and the rest of his positions, I mean, he was kind of close a few times, a few fourth positions, but a lot of the time for some of these races, we weren't really seeing him make a push until the end when some of the other cars just didn't have the gumption to be competitive. So I don't know how much it came down to his actual driving skill so much as, just the fact that a Ferrari is going to do better than some of the other cars that are out on the track. So I felt like the hype around him was a little bit more than what we got in terms of actual racing. But I think my kind of go-to for underrated, and I know he was only ninth overall in the championship, but I'm gonna say Pierre Gasly. Like a lot of people, I think ever since he got demoted and was put back down for AlphaTauri, have kind of written him off, but he was consistently qualifying very high this season. I mean, like for a lot of the time, I was just like, of course he's P6. That makes sense because that's just what he's been doing in this car. And we've seen him, kind of really pushing in order to be more aggressive with some of the people in the legacy teams that you would expect to see at the top of the grid. So I'm still really hopeful for him in his career. I think he's got a lot of good momentum coming off of this season, and that we're hopefully going to see great things from him and Yuki going into the 2022 season. Because even though this is technically kind of like a B team and a feeder team for Red Bull, I think that it's definitely a car that can be competitive with the rest of them, and who knows, may put a little bit more pressure on the rest of the grid this year. And hopefully Gasly will be on the podium a few more times, which I'd like to see.
Who would you say was your most inconsistent driver of the year? Because for me, despite winning one race this year, it's Danny Rick. Because he would have moments of greatness and then moments of just pure crap, and then he'd be good again, and then he'd be bad, and then he would be, he won the race in Italy, came fourth in Russia, and then he had a 13th place visit in Turkey, and then he was top 5 in the US, and then he just ended the season poorly. And
Yeah, those last 5 races don't look good.
No, they were awful, right? They were awful. I think it was a retirement. I think he finished in the top 5 once, but otherwise he was out of points. And I think, again, he has a slow start in these cars, but it was very inconsistent all the way through. Unlike Lando, who was, again, he's used to the product, but I just expected a little bit more from Danny Rick this season, going into a better car than what the Renault was last year.
I agree with that. And I think especially after getting that first place in Monza, a lot of people had higher expectations, because if you look at how he did earlier in the season leading up to that, he was consistently in the points more so than the back half of the season. Mm-hmm. So I think, at least I was hoping that would give him a little bit more, like motivation and energy and kind of drive going into the last few races of the season, and hopefully, maybe put a little more pressure on Norris, because I think a lot of people have kind of decided that he's the future of the McLaren team, even though Danny Rick has a bit more experience. So I'm hopeful that, either he figures out the car so that he is more competitive this year, or they're able to change the car to suit his driving style a little bit more, because clearly there was still a little bit of a disconnect, even though he was able to get that one podium finish.
His win at Italy was his saving grace of the season.
Yeah,
I found Italy like a really key race in the year for the midfield battle, because that was like at the pinnacle for McLaren, and that was kind of like Ferrari lost a race against its direct rival at their home
turf. Yeah,
and they took that personally, because after that, from Russia onwards, it was pretty much Ferrari ahead of McLaren all the way. And it was kind of, I found that Monza was the real tipping point in that mid-fight battle to go for. Because I think they really picked it up afterwards. I don't know if McLaren got complacent and just stopped developing the car and just kind of went focused on 2022 after Monza, because they're like, hey, we got our 1-2, we don't need to really, we kind of proven ourselves and we're going to focus on next year. Or if Ferrari really was like, okay, we really need to kick it into high gear and not get quote unquote embarrassed like that again at the remaining races.
So I guess a couple things there. Like I knew coming into the season, it was going to have to be an improvement year. And I think the objective for Ferrari is I don't think we're going to win races, to be quite frank, but we just want to be consistent in the midfield. And, we were able to see that. Obviously it sucked getting McLaren going 1-2 on your home turf, but the team stayed consistent. And Matthias Binotto said, after Monza, you'll see some improvements in the car. And we were able to see some of those changes, and then like in the end we are able to come third in the constructors, and like we can be much happier than obviously the season before. This is going to be controversial, but like I think my underrated, well, not underrated, but like, what do we call this? What we're calling this?
Inconsistent.
I just like, I think I'm going to go to Haas, and this is my rationale, is because it must be tough to be the drivers there, like maybe more Mick Schumacher than Nikita Mazepin.
Mhm.
But your team is not putting any developments into that car. They're focusing all on 2022. It's just hard. I just like, I don't see, for me, as if I was a driver, like how would I want to be consistently better every race, or just have that energy to keep driving?
Yeah.
And especially like if you look at how, I don't even think Schumacher's best was 12th, and Mazepin, I think his best was 14th at Azerbaijan. But it just lacked, like, I don't know how, I don't know about you guys, but maybe just so motivation or just underachieving. But yeah, I just like, it would just struggle for me as a driver if you know your
I
team's
think
not
it's really
putting.
disheartening because like Ferrari, even I think I read an article saying that Ferrari was shocked that even like Haas didn't develop the car one bit.
Mhm.
It was the same car all throughout the season. They put no money into this year's car except for like repairing damages and whatnot. And you could definitely tell it had a toll on the drivers, because if you remember after Nikita's Brazil qualifying, he was crying like on the interview because he was so frustrated with how the season was going. Like, mind you, again, like Haas doesn't have a simulator. Like, how are you a team? You don't have a simulator, especially when you have two young drivers who've only raced at half of these tracks. You're just gonna tell them to turn up on Friday or on Thursday, walk the track, and be like, "Oh yeah, you should be fine." Like, no, invest some money into a damn simulator, and like, don't make your drivers look like buffoons out there. And unfortunately, they did this year. So this better play it off for them. Like, Haas better be competitive in the midfield this year. Otherwise, I know like there's talks. I think it was like Audi and Porsche are going to be coming into F1 in the next few years. We may have 11 teams as opposed to 12, because I don't know if Haas is going to be a team by the time they come in. I really don't.
I definitely think that the simulator held them back, because I think it was almost the entire second half of the season. Like both Mick and Nikita, neither of them had been on any of these tracks before, and I'm so surprised that F1 even allows that at this stage of the game. Because from a safety standpoint, if you've got two guys out on the track who are driving at high speeds but don't know where they're going, you've got other people who are going to be more risky because they do understand the track. Just, you need to understand all the nuances of it so that you can drive safely and kind of avoid incidents. And I think that some people wanted to really like blame the two of them for some of the issues that they had at the end of the season for kind of being in the way, or causing some accidents or like stuff on the road. But if you don't know the track as well as someone who has either raced it a bunch of times before you or been in a sim for like 20 hours the week leading up to the race, you're just 100% not going to do as good a job. There's just really nothing you can do. Like, I'm not a driver, but just think of anyone who's even played a video game. Like, think of the first time you've driven a track or something versus like the 300th time. You're going to be better at it because you intuitively know ahead of time when to make the right call to start going into a turn or something like that.
Do you think their simulator was like a screen and then a PS5, and they just kind of threw it on with like one of those like wheels?
Honestly, like, there's a good chance that's the
That
closest
probably
thing.
is it, right? Which is really embarrassing.
We laugh, but it's true. Like, I'm pretty sure what like their simulator is literally just the F1 2021 game.
Like, that's the closest thing they've got. So I don't know. I'm hoping that because they didn't spend the money this year, this means that they have more money to invest next year, and hopefully to, for the love of God, buy a sim, because it's just insane.
So we'll get into the next topic. I guess this one is a no-brainer. Controversial moment of the season. there's a lot to pick here, and I think it would be very easy to pick Abu Dhabi. So for the benefit of the doubt, I will go first for this one. My controversial pick or moment, well, there's a couple. So one is the $50,000 fine on Max Verstappen touching Hamilton's wing. Like, come on. If he only touched the front wing, it would have been $25,000 according to Sebastian Vettel. But that's just Vettel's discussion change. But all seriousness, the British Grand Prix, when Hamilton and Verstappen were going wheel to wheel, and you just knew, and like anybody who's been watching racing, that turn where Hamilton clipped Verstappen's tire, like you shouldn't really go in the inside there. And thank God that Verstappen was able to walk. But the fact that he only got 10 seconds for that, and he ended up going to win the race, and then he's just driving around with the flag. I don't know about you, but that, like, with all due respect, that got my blood boiling watching that moment and that race moment in particular.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. Like, aside from Abu Dhabi, it's one of the first ones that comes to mind in terms of controversial moments. And like, just you see people were sharing clips from Snapchat and Instagram of the crash from the stands. And it was, I mean, one thing to watch it on a live feed through F1 TV and stuff, but to see it from the perspective of people in the grandstands or just around the track, that was terrifying. And honestly, I mean, I would have been freaking out wondering if Max was okay had he crashed into the barrier right in front of me. So I'm still so surprised that it was only a 10-second penalty and there was nothing greater than that, because they were also handing out other penalties like candy for things that were much more minor. And so for that to be 10 seconds, but then like smaller racing incidences of someone just cutting off a racing line coming out of a corner being like a 5 or 10-second penalty in itself is just apples and oranges, however they were trying to determine how they doled that out. And then I agree, it was kind of gratuitous celebration. When drivers are doing their cool down laps, they're not supposed to go off the track, and he was. I mean, just all manner of things were allowed to slide there that just didn't sit right with me.
What about you, Andrew?
Like for the race or for Great Britain, because you two summed up my points pretty much.
I guess, yeah. Like, what was your controversial moment of the season?
My controversial moment of the season lasted 23 races, and his name was Michael Massey.
I had a feeling
Erica touched on it so well. Like, the penalties that were getting thrown out in some of these races this year were quite interesting, and it really opened the case in terms of like what is racing and what's a racing incident and what's not a racing incident, and like where can you race. Like, Brazil was a key moment. Like, Max pushing Lewis all the way on the outside, and that's considered a driving incident. Well, many people were like, no, that's not the case. When it has like the F1 drivers confused on what's racing an incident and what's not, and what's allowed and what isn't, you know, you've done a bad job, because it should be straightforward. It should be quite standard. But I think he was looking a lot for the controversial moments this year, because those moments sell. And I really think Massey had Netflix either in his ear or he had the dollar signs in his eyes all season long to really build up the controversy. Because I bet you, like, this controversy, even though it's pissed off a lot of fans, a lot of like traditional racing fans, you're getting a lot of the new no idea what's going on, but really enjoying. Richie, you have knowledge on it. I'm talking like people that just watched the Abu Dhabi race for the first time was like, oh, this is crazy. Like, can't wait to watch next season and get into it, sort of idea, right? I think we're going to see a lot of new fans coming up that are going to be, I want to say, more neutral. I find a lot of the fans that are up nowadays are pretty neutral in terms of like who they like and who they don't. But a lot of the traditional fans are going to probably have kind of lost their love for a little bit of Formula One as a result of Massey. And you can tell that from a lot of stuff being posted on social media.
And especially how much crap that Latifi got that race.
Yeah, it was ridiculous. Like, don't tell me the guy wants to crash on purpose. Of course he doesn't want to crash on purpose. He's fighting. It's the last race of the year. He's fighting for position. Like, what else are you going to do? You're going to hand it to Mick. Like, no, you want to be on top. So yeah, unfortunately he crashed into the wall, but it's Massey's decisions up to that point that led to the controversy that you can't blame Max for that. You got to blame Massey. So that's why I don't understand why, people call him Verstappen's championship a fraud. Is that no, it's not fraudulent. He got to the same spot he did. And of course, Mike, Lewis should have won in that case, but blame Michael. Max did everything right. It was Michael's decision to let everybody go through, and then Max had the fresher tires and was able to pass him. So what can you do and blame Verstappen in that case? It's all depending on Michael Massey, and the fact that he has more power next year than he did this year is just insane, in my opinion. It's really going to be opening Pandora's box, in my opinion. I think a lot of people are going to get pissed off.
My hope is that he's kind of learned from this and will maybe read the rule book for once and establish some form of consistency if he's still in role. I don't know why, I still feel like something's going to happen and he's not going to end up being in charge of things this year, but I don't know. So I think that's the big thing. Like, I can only imagine how frustrating it is if you are the best at your sport. Like, you are racing like one of the top 20 in the world, arguably, because you are in Formula One. And yet, despite all of the time and effort you've put into building your strategy and knowing the rules and kind of playing within the limits of it, just arbitrary calls are made out that just throw everything off kilter. Like, it just must be so frustrating. Like, you see it in every sport when like a ref makes a call in a soccer match and someone gets screaming in their face and stuff and you don't understand it. But I feel like it's just been so much more frequent this year that it's impossible for the drivers to kind of like adapt to whatever is going on.
And it was more frequent as it went on in the year to the end of the like the last 5-6 races. It was clearly evident, right?
Yeah.
Especially just added to the drama. It's like, oh, okay. Verstappen wins 3 straight races. Hamilton wins 3 straight races. Oh, we're going to the last race. This is going to not be controversial. I promise. So we can, let's have a fun topic. This one just came into me via YouTube. Who is your favorite driving pairing? And what I mean by driver, like, who was your 2 favorites who clearly gelled with each other? They were just fun. They were fun on the track. They were fun in social media. Yeah, I'm just curious to see how this one goes. I'll go first. And I think easily, hands down, it was Carlos Sainz and Charles Leclerc. If you watch any of the videos that the Ferrari team did on their stuff, I thought it was just hilarious. And they knew. Well, I know a lot of pressure was on Leclerc this year, regardless, as a returning driver, and not so much on Carlos. So Carlos was able to kind of relax. But I found that throughout the season, they didn't really bicker with each other, or maybe they kept it very backdoors, and they made the season enjoyable. And I think that it obviously contributed to their success this year.
Awkward silence.
Yeah. I don't know.
Erica, you go next.
Okay,
Erica, yes, go on you.
So, unsurprising, Ricci chose Ferrari, and I'm sure you can guess that I'm going to choose McLaren as a result. So, I don't know, like, to be fair, I hadn't really started following all the drivers until partway through the season and the teams and stuff like that. It just wasn't my bag, but I got super competitive with my fantasy F1 league and was like, maybe social media will give away some hints. But I think the 2 of them, like, they're very cordial. I don't think it's necessarily like the joke around like bro-y stuff that people would have anticipated, but like they're both decently big personalities that have a lot of fun to bring to the table. Like, they're doing all kinds of Christmas stuff around the McLaren office and like these dumb hats and little beards and things of that sort. And I mean, individually on their own, they're always just kind of trolling things, like just posting what they want to post and doing what they want to do, and they're not really like too worried about the aesthetic of it all. Like, sometimes you see signs or like Lewis and these other people, and like all the photos are like the perfect shot of them walking and it's all edited to look super intense and sporty, and then Lando's like P3 and he's got his sunglasses upside down, just like, oh, a little selfie, why not? So I don't know, I really like those two together, and especially again going back to Monza, seeing them on the podium kind of like having a blast celebrating together was just a really kind of nice moment. So they're kind of my pick. I have a couple honorable mentions too, but I don't want to take anything away from Andrew for his.
Okay, I might cheat a little bit in this one. For me though, it was Gasly and Sonoda.
Yeah.
Because they had a lot of fun together, just like on social. But I would say in collaboration with Sergio and Max. If you ever watch like the Red Bull AlphaTauri videos online on YouTube, they're hilarious. And they just look like they have such a genuinely a fun time with each other. In that case, and especially them making fun of Yuki's height. I remember one of the videos they were in Texas, and then they were able to shove Yuki in like the undercarriage of a F-150. No problem because of his size. But I think Gasly and Tsunoda were good. I know Yuki came out and said it was mentally tough being a rookie because he really had no one to go to. But I think Gasly was a pretty good mentor to him this year, as well as they were quite funny together in social media stuff, and we're always laughing and whatnot. So I think to me they were the pairing of the season.
They were definitely a lot of fun to watch. They were one of my honorable mentions.
So my honorable mention actually is Lance and Seb during the when they were promoting the new James Bond movie, and so when they're doing the stunt challenge driving the old Aston Martin car, and then there's the episode of him, Lance and Seb building the Legos model of the James Bond car, and it was just really funny just seeing those two and like how bad Lance Stroll is at Lego and how perfect Sebastian Vettel is. Also, I got the Lego Seinfeld set. I don't know if I told you this, guys, but that took me like forever to build. Like that, the hardwood. Like I think it was at least like a solid 7-hour build, maybe, because I think it was. I don't know how many pieces. It was at least more than 1,000 for sure, but that's different. But yeah, Lego always a win for me. Anybody. So any F1 driver team, social media teams listening to our pod, get Lego on. I'm hooked. So
Love it.
I would say another notable shout out, and this is not a team, but kind of a cross team thing, was Seb and Schumacher. So, like at Spa, the two of them, like playing a little footy in the garage, just trying to stay out of the rain and stuff constantly. I mean, I know, obviously, I mean, both Nikita and Mick were rookies this year, so it's not like you have someone on the Haas team who's a bit of a vet to turn to for that stuff. So, just knowing, I mean, I'm pretty sure like Mick grew up around Seb all the time because of racing when he was young and being, Michael Schumacher's son. So to see him kind of take him under his wing and make sure he felt comfortable in the paddock and, give him a little bit of advice, I'm sure here and there as he needed it. There were just some really touching moments between the two of them, which I thought were really great that people were willing to share and kind of let us see instead of letting us think that all the teams and drivers just have this huge animosity amongst one another.
Andrew, since I already talked, go ahead if you want to.
Oh, so that was a good point. If I had an honorable mention, it actually would have been Lewis and Valtteri this year. I think ever since Valtteri's been Lewis's teammate, Lewis has had more fun racing. I know it's been prevalent that he's been a number one driver and whatnot, but you can genuinely see it in his face. And I think he really didn't want Valtteri to go because I think there's a genuine friendship there going forward between the two of them. Because at the beginning of the season, they did like a video together, but catching up over the off season, and you haven't seen like Lewis kind of laugh like that or be that sociable. You don't see that sociable side to them very often, but when you do, it was nice to see and them enjoy each other's company. So I think they were a great team and they won a constructors championship this year. So can't say anything wrong about that.
Yeah, I can't argue that one. I was going to go back to the Seb and Mick point. I think Seb because I guess Michael Schumacher was always kind of like a figure to Seb, and I think Seb wanted to recreate that with Mick. And I think, even early on in the season, or maybe it was like 2020, I think Seb was started like, Mick was coming to watch some of the races, and Seb was just kind of being that fatherly figure. And obviously we always think about the Schumacher family. They actually had a really nice toast. I don't know if you guys watched the FIA awards, with Jean Todt. I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name correctly, the former Ferrari team principal. He just like, I thank everybody, but also thank Michael, and like, we miss him dearly. So that kind of hit the heart there. But yeah, no, I think that was just kind of like an honorable mention, like him trying to be a fatherly figure, like what Michael was to him during his couple of years when he won at Red Bull, and was maybe a little bit immature. And I think you kind of saw that with Seb as he kind of goes on to his F1 career. So before I cry from talking about this, I'll joke aside. I think if there was a one driver you're looking forward to next year, I know we were kind of cheating, but I'm very curious for me to see Russell in a Mercedes. I don't know about you, but I'm kind of stoked. That was like a huge announcement this season. If I were to put like a top headline, the minute that Bottas signed with Alfa Romeo and seeing George finally getting to go into a car that he will be competitive with, I'm actually intrigued how this is going to all play out. But yeah, I think that's one driver I'm looking forward to next year right now, seeing how that will play out. I'll go Andrew.
So my driver next year is going to be Carlos Sainz. I think he really breaks the duck next year. Honestly, I think he got not a lot of credit this year. He's underrated. I really think he's really going to do some dominant performances next year in 2022. And I'm going to predict him to be in the top 3 in the Drivers' Championship next season.
I wouldn't mind that.
Because I think Binotto, knowing his past, has developed a really good car for Ferrari for 2022.
That's the fingers crossed.
Yeah, I'm not trying to be a Ferrari fanboy or anything like that. I genuinely think he's going to actually do well next season.
Look, when I'm at the Canadian Grand Prix next year, if Ferrari's on the podium, it's going to be a party in the Lance Stroll stand. That's what we got to say. And if you're going to be there, come say hi to the pod, because we'll be excited. That's another. Yeah, come say hi. You probably don't know who we are, but you'll spot us. We'll be say, Andrew, did you get your ticket yet? Are you still kind of thinking about it?
Not yet. We'll get
get Andrew a ticket. That's if there's one.
Start a GoFundMe.
Yeah. We start a GoFundMe for my ticket.
GoFundMe or any sort of thing. Get Andrew to Montreal. Like we'll figure out a ride or whatever. But like he needs to be in the Lance Stroll stands. We need to celebrate Ferrari winning there. Just anyways. Okay. Sorry. Okay, I totally kiboshed.
It's totally fine.
Okay,
yeah, McLaren. Honestly, just a good race. We want that.
In terms of, sorry, are we talking about the drivers that we're excited to see, or like who we think is going to do well? Because
I think drivers. I'll go. Sorry, Erica, you just go wherever you want with this one.
I'm asking questions and answering them myself, or not waiting for an answer at all. I'm excited to see what Zoo's gonna do when he comes into F1 next year. I think it'll be interesting given, some of the changing of the rules around the cars, and to see what Alfa Romeo is gonna do, because he's got a great teammate in Bottas, which we know, and there's a wealth of experience that he can take from him. So he's a young guy who's done really well in F2, and I just think anytime if you get like a good mesh and meld between the two drivers, and you've got a team that's hungry to do well, like maybe they'll be a little bit more competitive, and they'll be kind of in that midfield gunning for a little bit more. So I'm excited to see what he can do to kind of shake things up, and because he's the only person coming up from F2 this year, right? So
I'm gonna say there's gonna be a lot of pressure on him next season, because a lot of people, especially the media, want to see Piastri in that position as opposed to Zhou. So he has his work cut out, I think, next season. And I really hope he does perform and kind of silences the critics. Otherwise, he's going to get blasted in the media.
Well, I totally get why people wanted Piastri in that seat, but I think it's going to be like interesting to see what kind of happens. So I'm hoping that he performs at a high level, that Zhao's able to, really kind of step into the role and step up as a lot of people would expect someone to. But yeah, here's hoping that Bottas just kind of takes him under his little Finnish wing and off they fly into a successful 2022.
Also, Valtteri, if you're listening to this, I have limited coffee supply right now and would love some of your Finnish coffee.
We would love it if you sent us some coffee. Actually, I'm probably just gonna buy it to try it because I'm curious at this point. But
Is it on his Instagram page? Can you like? Is it like you can buy it from?
So.
Is it?
I think so. I think my main question is whether or not with importation and stuff, I can get it here. So.
Oh, it's fine. It's like, oh yeah, I can order this, no problem. And then the minute you realize you go pick it up, you're like, duty fees.
$50 duties. Anyway.
Did someone say $70? And you're like, but this was 10.
In case you can't tell, I've been watching Parks and Rec, and I've got a little bit of John Ralphio going on here. Technically, I'm homeless. So
we're still finishing up Seinfeld for us. So that's fair. Okay, so I think on that note, this was well, not only this, because we have how many more days till the next race? I don't know when I do that.
Too many.
No, yeah, too many. I think like 70 something.
You can tell we are excited for 2022. We are excited
20th. Oh my god!
Pardon?
It's like just over 2 months. It's March 20th.
So basically, yeah, we have 2 months to go until the new season. We're really excited to. Sorry, 1 second. We're really excited to wrap up season 1 of our podcast, and I just want to thank everybody for joining us along this ride. Erica and Andrew have been awesome to be co-hosts with, and we're looking excited because obviously we did the podcast this year in the midpoint of the season. So now we got a lot of races to do. We will literally start from fresh. And I think we're probably, guys, I think we'll probably do a lead up episode to the new season to kick off season 2 of this pod. But but it's only possible when you guys kind of like and subscribe and watch our videos. So we really appreciate the fan participation and everything. This has been one hell of a ride. I mean, we're still going. Episode 13. But yeah, no, it's been fun, and obviously crazy F1 season. And let's go, baby.
Something to note too. Not only is the first race on March 20th, the first preseason testing, 5-day preseason testing at Catalonia is on February 21st. So we're just over a month away from some quote unquote racing.
31 days.
I can't wait. Let's go.
I can now wake up on weekends and do something. This is great.
You have a purpose for waking up before noon on a weekend. It's going to be great.
Or we on Sundays, to be clear. Yeah, on Sundays. Yeah. But anyways,
you don't wake up at 5 a.m. to watch FP3 and then qualifying. It's only me that does that.
Also, I just want to say shout out to the animals that get up at 4 a.m. to watch the F2 and F3 races prior to the Sunday race. You are the true true heroes in my books, because there's no way I'm getting up at 4 a.m. to watch an F3 race. I'll catch the highlights.
No, there's been multiple times where I won't sugarcoat it this year, where I've set my alarm and I've missed that alarm and I've caught the last 4 laps of the race, and I'm like, I've done my job. Okay. Straight to the pod.
Love it.
We're recording in a couple hours. Yes. Okay. I'm getting on the tangent. So on that note, thank you everybody for your support. And I think, as I said, we'll see you in the next episode. We'll kind of decide what that preseason looks like. I think there's a couple of sponsorship deals that maybe we want to talk about. We're going to miss UPS on the Ferrari. It's not going to look the same, but we can get into some of that later. Also, I think, Andrew, you want to walk us out, but just a fun tidbit that came out today that we didn't really talk about, but Maserati will field a Formula E team in 2023. Okay, but like we'll talk about this in another episode. So Andrew, why don't you do the honors? Thank you guys so much for supporting the F1 podcast with your host X Ricci and your co-host Andrew.
See you soon, everybody.
And Erica.
Peace out, y'all.
And Andrew, why don't you send us off?
Everyone, thank you for your time. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and subscribe, and follow us on Apple Podcasts. Bye out, everybody.